All right, welcome to episode 23 of the Brew Crew Scoop. I'm Scoop, that's Cole. Unfortunately, we recorded the last episode about 2 hours before the Brawl at AmFam Field. So we won't hit too heavy on that since it's already been about a week past, but we'll definitely talk about it. And then we also got some Tyler Black talk about his first week in MLB. Craig Counsell versus the Brewers as they were down at Wrigley this past weekend, and then a little bit of interleague play with the Royals. And then we'll hit on all of our typical segments as well. Cole, I know you were in and out on some of the games this weekend because you were all the way on the West Coast. How you doing? Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm doing well. Was in Orange County for the weekend, and actually, we right when I landed on Friday, there was like an event for the wedding I was attending, and we went to the beach, and there were a bunch of kids playing some baseball or wiffle ball on the beach, and made me think about what my childhood would have been like if I grew up in Orange County. Maybe it'd be a little bit better at baseball.
Yeah, so nothing major this week really to hit on before we start. So I'll just break down the recaps real fast. So we left off right where game two of the Rays series was starting. We were at a very boring game the night before that where the Brewers lost 1-0. Well, game two, we saw fireworks. The Brewers won 8-2. Tyler Black made his MLB debut after Sanchez pulled up lame, trying to hustle to first base. Tyler Black came right in, pinch ran for him, and got a laser of a double to start. He had a single as well. Awesome with it, seeing his dad on the call. But Jose Siri homered early in the game, and then later Freddie Peralta hit him with a 3-0 fastball. Um, we'll break that down a little more after the whole rundown. But after that, Abner Uribe took matters into his own hands and decided to throw hands at Jose Siri. So game three against the Rays, Brewers won 7-1. Adames homered twice. Contreras had two RBI. By the way, I think I'm going back to RBI from RBIs. I've been thinking about it too much. Colin Ray went six scoreless, and the ump show continued as they took away Thiago Vieira's glove for being too light, even though he used it the night before. Then the Brewers headed to Wrigley. I was there on Friday for the game one win. They were down 1-0 going to the eighth behind Joe Ross. And then Contreras, Adames, and Bowers had RBI singles off of Adbert Alzolay. He came in the eighth. It was like super reminiscent of game 163. That's like almost exactly how that game went. But awesome to see, awesome atmosphere. Come away with the win. Sneak went out there. Game two, they lost 6-5. They were down 5-0. They had a 4-run seventh, including a home run from Blake Perkins. They won in the ninth, but it wasn't enough. And then game three, they lost 5-0 as Javier Assad continues to be one of the out of nowhere aces in baseball, I guess. It's been
Hmm.
only a month, but he was kind of a swingman in the past, but he looked really good. And then heading to Kansas City, Brewers lost game one, 3-2. Gary Sanchez had a 2-run homer. The Royals manufactured three in the seventh off Koenig and Piguero. Bryce Wilson went six strong, scoreless again. And then game two, Brewers won 6-5. Hoskins and Ortiz had back-to-back home runs. They let the Royals back in, let them take a lead. And then with two outs in the ninth inning, Contreras doubled, Sanchez walked, and Willy Adames saved the day with a 3-run home run right into the glove of Trevor McGill warming up. He came in to close the game. Um, that pushed Contreras's on base streak to 15 games, and then today we saw him get on base, so it's 16 games now. Brewers lost today, 6-4, but another El Gary bomb. So that was good to see. Brewers end up 4-4 since we last spoke. They kept their heads above water as Yelich came back today. They went 12-11 while he was gone. They're still tied for first place. We'll get in the standings later. But that was a lot to unpack. First thing, what was your takeaway of the whole Freddie Peralta, Jose Siri, Abner Uribe mess?
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of how fiery this Brewers team's going to be, right? We have already been in a couple, I guess, fights, and we saw Murph starting to show how angry he can get earlier this week. So I think that's just kind of what we have is some young fire on this team. Realistically, if I was an unbiased fan that didn't find it somewhat entertaining to see the benches clear every once in a while, I'd say we're in the wrong there, or I might say that anyways. But it just makes for a little extra excitement. But yeah, I mean Siri hit a bomb and he reacted, but a lot of the league does when they hit home runs now, and didn't seem outlandish. And then the Freddie situation is just, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say if he did it on purpose or not. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. If he was going to hit somebody, a 3-0 count wouldn't be the worst time to do it. But at the same time, it's not really his MO. And it wouldn't make sense to, try to get ejected when you're pitching well and want to go deep in a game. So it doesn't really, I mean, who knows? But regardless, I think the bigger issue comes into, once again, talking about the umpires, and the fact that I don't think he should have been tossed after one pitch a little too far inside and hit someone in the thigh. To me, that's not an ejectable offense. That's warnings. And then you probably avoid what happens later on in the game. So I think that's really the issue. I don't know if you have an opinion.
Yeah, I do. I hate being the guy that screams umpires because like all the time because that gets so tired. But I think the Brewers have real reason to be upset with umpires this past week. But here's my takeaway. I think that Jose Siri did nothing wrong, to be completely honest. I want to believe Freddie Peralta. He said after the game, like, why would he do that? He has 66 pitches. Freddie Peralta has always seemed like an extremely level-headed guy. So I really, really want to, and I feel like do believe Freddie Peralta that it was a mistake. Now, it looks like the obvious to throw at somebody in that spot, other than his pitch count. So like I said, I don't think Siri did anything wrong. I don't think Peralta did anything wrong. I think Chris Guccione made the wrong call coming out and thinking about it and tossing him out of the game. And I think that caused the fight later in the game. And I think Abner Uribe is ultimately in the wrong as well, obviously, for throwing hands
But I
for
mean,
nothing. But
that
I
we
don't think that
know
happens if Guccione doesn't do that.
yeah. Well, I was
So,
just gonna say that's kind of how Abner. I mean, he's
yeah.
about as fiery as you get out in the pen, right? And he's young, whatever was exchanged between those two. But yeah, I think it goes back to the umps. And I know when Murphy came out, he was yelling like, "You don't know my effing guy," or stuff like that, because like you were saying, that's not really how Freddie operates. But my thing is you're never gonna really know intent in baseball, right? You can't read the pitcher's mind. So in that event, even if he did it on purpose, that's still not the protocol from my understanding of watching baseball as a fan for how
And
long. You don't toss someone there.
Siri
Yeah,
walked to
Siri just
first base.
took
He put
first.
his head
Yep.
down.
Yep.
So it seemed like the guys were cool with it. So
Mhm.
that was my biggest issue is that Siri seemed fine, Peralta seemed fine. It was Chris Guccione that escalated everything. And then Pat Murphy comes out to defend his guy. And you can't read the lips of Guccione, but then you can read the lips of Pat Murphy getting fired going, you're calling me a piece of shit? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know that as an umpire, yeah, it's hard to say you got to just keep your mouth shut and just take it and whatever because you have the power. But that dude seemed like a total dickbag the whole series. And then the last game, icing on the cake, being, oh, yeah, you can't use that glove today, even though you did yesterday. Now, maybe Kevin Cash called for that. Maybe he's playing a little mind trick or something. But
Mhm.
it was just, I think that everything is avoided if there's warnings there, as long as no one retaliates then. But like I said, I don't think Uribe is in the right, but that doesn't happen if not for the overreaction from the umpiring crew. So sad to see. Obviously, it was a long time ago now already, so we don't need to harp on it forever. But Peralta received a 5-game suspension, which is 1 game for a starter. He appealed it so he could start against the Cubs, and then he dropped it now, so he's just going to be pushed back 1 day. Uribe was suspended and was optioned, actually, so I believe he'll have to serve that when he comes back up. But he also is struggling a bit.
Well, did you see too that he was in the middle of serving a suspension from a fight in AAA, I
No
think.
way.
So when he went back down, he had to resume serving that suspension, and I think he's now able to pitch there. But yeah, and I know when you serve an MLB suspension, um, the team can't replace you
Yeah.
on the roster, right? So we'll be down a reliever when we finally call on Uribe. There's probably some extra strategy in when we want to bring him back up. Whether that's maybe right before the All-Star break and you can kind of not overuse, but use that extra couple days right in the middle of the season to let the bullpen refresh and then get Abner back on the back end. But he's kind of got some stuff to work through regardless. Like you were saying, he hadn't been really pitching his best anyway. So we'll see how they maneuver around that.
Yep. So then moving into the Cup Series, I know you were out of town, so you just said you didn't get to watch too much, I don't think, but yeah, tough to lose 2-3, but great to at least steal one there. I wanted to. Did you see Craig Counsell after the game after you brought in his struggling closer, an inning early, and which I don't. Whatever, you got to do that. The Cubs bullpen being bad isn't his fault, but after the game, he said, "We need Adbert, like we need him," and
Hmm.
I just remember him saying the exact same thing about Taylor Rogers, saying, "We need Taylor,
Yeah.
we need him." So it's just funny
Yeah.
to see, and I I don't miss the press conferences by any means. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you had
Yeah.
anything else to add from that Cubs series, but
No, well, I know you went on Friday and I watched a bit on Friday, and then Saturday actually I was in the church getting ready for the ceremony we were going to watch, but we were early. So I was actually watching the game next to my grandpa, but he didn't understand that I was watching it as he was box score watching next to me, and he was trying to tell me what was going on. And I was like, "Grandpa, it's literally right here. I can show you." But yeah, I don't know. The one thing about that Saturday game, and it's obviously came into play today and a lot of our games last night, it came into play the right way, but we've been in so many games. I heard the stat today, but in almost all of our losses, even we've brought the tying run up to the plate, I believe. So I don't have the exact number, but it just goes to show we're in a lot of these games, and that's where you want to be, right? You don't want to be getting destroyed every game. If you're losing, you want to have a chance. And then with what happened last night, for instance, um, you can take advantage of it. And today it looked like for a second we might get it because we started real hot at the start of the ninth with the perfect guys up at the plate, kind of in the top turning, but it didn't work out. Um, but yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
And
I don't
then
want to jump into it, but it was
no,
tough to see Yelly hitting third right away, coming back after being off so long. But
I know I don't want to overreact, but seeing him hammer two balls into the ground in his first two at bats, is like, come on, please.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, but and then Blake Perkins had a couple miscues today, including one where he slipped, which is unlike him. A couple bad defensive plays from the Brewers. So I mean that's gonna happen. But
yeah,
my biggest takeaway from this Royals series, I think, is I admittedly haven't watched much Royals since this dude's been up. Vinny Pasquantino, I know he's good, but holy shit, does he look like a tough out like at the
yeah,
plate? I don't know how much you've seen of him, but he almost reminds me of like a Rizzo, where like it doesn't matter how nasty the pitch is. Like if he's got two strikes, he's gonna foul it off or he's gonna put it in play and get the job done. Like I said, knew he was good, but man, he looks like somebody I would not want to face. I don't know. He just something about his presence in the box. He's big and he fouls it off a lot, and you can't get anything by him. It seems.
yeah. And he's a guy too coming off. I think it was ACL. If not, it was another severe lower
Yeah,
body
leg
injury.
injury.
And I was a little like concerned because bigger guy, obviously a lot of baseballs that fast twitch pivot type motion. And he's been pretty good this year, and he's still got his pop and so on. So yeah, no, they got some young pieces that are definitely interesting. The back half of their lineup is kind of trying to figure stuff out still. I know when they signed Renfroe, everyone was acting like it was a steal because Renfroe is so consistent, blah blah blah, as we saw, but he hasn't done that yet this year. But
Yeah,
who cares? If they're winning games without him and he can warm up too, they'll be good.
they're building a nice young core. Garcia looks good. Cole Ragans, obviously Bobby Witt, but Cole Ragans looks like he's a legitimate ace. A guy we played against growing up, Alec Marsh from
Yep.
Milwaukee. He's looked pretty solid. He's on the
Yeah.
IL right now, but he's looked pretty solid. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
they got a lot of pieces.
I like the Royals. They're a fun team, but yeah, that's all I had from those series. Unless you have anything else, I want to let you take away the untouchable pitchers of the week.
Right before that, I was just gonna, I guess, talk about today's lineup. I just thought it was really interesting with Sanchez getting the start at first, and I think he stayed there throughout the whole game. Interesting to see with some of the roster moves, and obviously we just today optioned Tyler Black, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But the decision there, you assume he's gonna get some more work at first and get more comfortable, but it was just kind of weird because in the offseason they didn't really talk about using Sanchez at first, right? Like in the back of everyone's head, you're kind of like, oh, we're gonna carry this good batting catcher. We have all these guys that can DH. I wonder, and you're just kind of sitting there, and then all of a sudden, Gary Sanchez for first base for the whole game today. And admittedly, I was following on the radio a little bit, and then I watched just the last inning, so I didn't really see his plays in and out of the game. But I think that's a really interesting piece if he can be okay there. But I mean, I'm not expecting him to be Gold Glover at first, but I thought that was interesting. And then even yesterday to finish out the game, what the outfield was Bowers, Perkins, and Monasterio. Yeah, so we're seeing some interesting pieces fit in, which is great. You know, we have to field a team of 9 out there or whatever, but definitely not the team Gold Glove that we earned last year if it's going to keep being put together like that.
Yeah, the thing about Sanchez at first base is you see Tyler Black at option today, and my first thought is, okay, maybe it's a Super 2 thing. Put him down for a couple weeks, we get that extra year of ARP. And then some people are saying, well, maybe he just needs more reps at first base. Fair enough. He doesn't look like a good defender. And then you see the lineup come out, and Gary Sanchez is at first base, and then you're like, well, he's not worse than Gary Sanchez, but Sanchez has been swinging it decently well, and if he could even be a Rowdy Tellez defensively over there, let it happen, I guess. So
yeah, it's just weird to look at the team that way. And sorry, the one other thing I was gonna say, just because I always like to hear from the layman, as we say, not the Twitter layman either, because the Twitter average Joe is not the average Joe. They get pretty riled up, the ones that we hear from. But I hopped in the car, and the Uber driver yesterday, we got back pretty late, and he had the feed on from the game, and I was talking to him about it, and he was just talking about how important it is to be in games at the end and complete a comeback every once in a while just to get the fans excited and stuff like that. And he was a pretty casual fan, it sounded like, but it is a good point. Like if you're in every game, like we were saying, not only does it help the team, I think, believe they can, be in every game, but also fans. And throughout an 81 game home season, to get people to show up midweek and stuff, they want to be able to see a competitive game. So I just like that that's kind of the brand that it seems like we're starting to get as a team that can stay in every game and is pretty fun to watch. So
absolutely. Especially with a fun young team too. So
yeah. And a fun old manager.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so
Untouchable Pitchers, Cole. Who you got?
You fellas are untouchable. Is that the thing? No one can get to you?
Untouchable. Yeah, so it's kind of hard again with how we work, just because if we talk a handful of games ago, maybe a couple starters started twice, but I'm going here with I have one starter, one reliever, and both gave up 0 earned runs, at least prior to today, and neither of them pitched today. So the starter, Bryce Wilson, he went 6 shutout, 6 Ks, 1 hit in his last start, which we lost. But obviously not his fault, given he did that. He's really stepped up to the plate, or I guess I should say the rubber. Since moving out of the pen, he kind of started slow out of the pen this year, and I was a little worried that maybe he wasn't going to be able to do what he did last year. And then they moved him to the rotation, and I was worried again because some of his history in the rotation isn't great, and he's been incredible, honestly. He started the game we went to, you were talking about last Monday.
Yeah.
And he started slow, but got out of that first inning jam pretty decently and then pitched really well throughout the game. And he's been really, really good. I mean, 6 Ks and 1 hit over 6 innings against the Cubs. Again, you can't really do much better than that. So
Royals.
That's.
But yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Wait. My
That
bad.
was game 1 against the Royals. You're good.
That's how
I know you were out of town. Hey, who knows? They could be around 2, but I'm not fact checking myself. My notes say Royals, but yeah.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, and then I was going to say
40 ERA and 30 innings pitched. That's what I wanted to say.
About total now. So and that was inflated a little bit from when he was a reliever, and then his starter ERA would have to be way lower than that, I'm sure. So, yeah, awesome. And then Hobie has pitched 4.2 in 4 games in the span since we last talked, and has again 0 earned, 7 Ks, and we know Hobie comes in and pretty high leverage spots a lot of the time too. And he was another guy that right at the start of the year gave up a couple bombs and people were kind of worried too. But back to what we know Hobie as, and I don't know, I just love watching him pitch because he's not going to overpower guys, but he paints corners and is just so reliable. So those are the pitchers, Bryce Wilson and Hobie Milner.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I want to give a
Yeah.
little shout out to Brian Hudson, who's looked really, really
Yep.
fucking good out of the bullpen. And quick small shout out to Trevor McGill because he's only pitched a little bit after the injury, but he's looked kind of nasty. So
yeah. Yep.
your backwards hat is throwing me off. You look so unprofessional. Did you see Colin Cowherd ripping on JD Redick today?
I was gonna say
I know you love Cowherd and I don't.
Well, I haven't listened to Colin Cowherd in like years, but that's been his bit for like forever. Is there's backward hats guys, but then there was a picture of him in one once, and it was this big joke. But yeah, it is pretty unprofessional.
He's gonna be an NBA head coach. He needs to be more professional and turn his hat around, especially when he's podcasting.
Yeah, I don't know if I like JJ Redick or not. He's got decent takes, but he's got a lot of takes. But that's not what we're talking about.
I don't know enough about basketball to know if his takes are that great or not. But hey, who are your hot hitters of the week?
Stop dropping on fire, Ricky Bobby! I'm on fire! He's so hot right now.
I stuck with a guy that was, well, at least prior to today, fresh on the mind. And that's Willy Adames. In the 7 games, again, I didn't really count today's, but he still had a hit today. Since we last talked, obviously he had quite the big hit last night. But he had 4 home runs in those 7 games, 6 runs, 12 RBI, steal. I mean, yeah, 4 home runs in those 7 games. I guess that's all I really have to say he's the hot hitter. But yeah, he was hot. And then Bryce Strang still hit 304 in 26 plate appearances in those 7 games. And as a leadoff hitter today, I think he had 2 hits, if I recall. So
yep,
he's
start the game.
Yeah, or 3 hits. Yeah, three for 4. So I guess he gets the extra mention there. So those are the 2 kind of obvious takes for hot hitters. And I always like looking at like the exit velocities too in the span, and Oliver Dunn actually had the highest average exit velocity in those 7 games, but only 16 plate appearances because he's obviously not really an everyday guy at this point. But then Adames and Contreras are both over 92 average exit velos, which is no surprise to anyone that watches the Brewers that those 2 guys are hammering the ball. So yeah, those are the standout, admittedly kind of obvious hot hitter is Willy, and then we'll throw in our possible new leadoff hitter, at least against righties.
Yeah, I just wanted to obviously William Contreras gets all the love, but 16 games on base already, and he's already driven in 29. He's also stole 3 bases, which is incredible to see from a dude who catches every single day and probably is only given up that many defensively. And then Joey Ortiz, I think, still isn't getting enough love. He looks pretty good. I know we just talked about this before in text, so we can talk about it now. Joey Ortiz has looked solid. He just homered yesterday, and we're still not really seeing him face right-handed pitching. And I get it; they're playing the platoon, like Murphy said. We want to see what Oliver Dunn can do. But if you actually look at the splits, and I know that we're a stats sport now, a projection sport, but Ortiz is actually crushing right-handed pitching right now in like 65 plate appearances. So no Oliver Dunn hate. I've said it a few times. I'll say it again. Dude has barely played above AA. So like he's got time to see what he can really do. You say he's tearing the cover off the ball, exit velo wise. So great. But I'm personally pretty much ready to see Joey Ortiz be the everyday third baseman until someone else can take it from him. But that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I'd say in his scenario and what we, at least as fans, think Joey Ortiz is supposed to be, he needs those at-bats, because if he's really supposed to be the next shortstop, he's probably not only playing against lefties.
Yep.
So yeah, I think you can put him out there, and if he starts to struggle, then great. You have the guy that you say matches up better anyways. So no, I agree that I would think he'd be pretty much an everyday guy, and if his own kind of youthful experience or lack thereof starts to be an issue, then you can let someone who projects better split wise. But I would say it's worth giving him the shot if he's going to be an everyday guy.
Yeah, and Oliver Dunn, we've seen him do some really good things at the plate and in the field. I'm sure he's going to be a great major leaguer once he really settles in, even if
You
it's not until
sure?
maybe next year. I think he will. He looks he got the pieces. I just think that he still needs some more time to develop, and which is fine if you let him do it in the major league roster, but not if you have a guy, in my opinion, who I think is ready to be every day. But it's not like Joey Ortiz is an all-star right now, but he's looking good and he needs the consistent at bats. But I wanted to segue that, talking a little bit about the lineup with Pat Murphy. So I've really liked Pat Murphy baseball wise, and then all the extracurriculars as well. The only things that I was wondering your thoughts on with Murphy is, so we talked about Ortiz and Dunn, but he's had some quick hooks with these starting pitchers a couple of times. And, normally, okay, we don't have established starting pitchers really besides Freddie. And normally we have a lockdown bullpen, but the bullpen's been heavily taxed. Williams is out. Uribe is struggling and sent down. I'm curious to see if you've noticed that some of these hooks have been a little quick or not. There's been some in like the 60s and 70s in the pitch counts where guys are rolling or doing fairly well at least. So I wanted to know if you thought the same thing or if I'm just overthinking something. Again, I love Pat Murphy to this point, but something to just pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know all the, I guess, behind the scenes and discussions that are had. Maybe they know these guys are going to have quick hooks. But yeah, even, I mean, Ross today only had 67 pitches. And yeah, I know earlier in the year too, there was one with Ross where Ross thought he was still humming and he got yanked. I don't know. It's tough because, like you said, we just don't really have established guys that you feel confident giving the ball for that third time through or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, we need the bullpen more in September and October than we do right now.
Yeah.
So if that's going to be a issue, I'd rather let someone eat another inning and see how it goes.
Another
But
guy
yeah, it's
struggling in
just
the
tough.
bullpen.
Yeah.
Hyams is struggling too. 12 innings, 5.25 ERA. So 7 earned over 12 innings. So another guy just to point out in the bullpen that's struggling. So that also brings up my question about the quick hooks. But
Yeah. I mean, you want guys to pitch more, but that's just not necessarily how Major League Baseball operates anymore anyways. But we'll see if guys maybe start feeling a little more comfortable and go a little bit deeper. But it all depends. I mean, it doesn't help that Gasser is still building back up after his injury and so on. So we just don't have inning eaters, and we knew that, but I wouldn't mind to see him maybe go have a couple more guys go 6 innings than 5. That could pay pretty big dividends in the long run.
yeah, I think we're gonna see Gasser likely take Freddie's spot when he gets pushed one day. So we'll see his debut soon, likely. What do you got for Statcast this week?
Yeah, so this was actually, I have it for Joe Ross's prior outing against the Cubs. I think that was a game you were at, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then because he threw today and we had the time, I also have some stuff from today to compare a little bit, but I was just looking at his mix in the Friday game against the Cubs is a little different than today. He threw a good amount more four seams against the Cubs, and obviously was very successful in that outing. Versus today, he threw 29% four seams, where today he only threw 10%, which I thought was kind of interesting. I wouldn't expect to see that big of a variance. He still threw mostly sliders, 42% today and 38% in that Cubs game. And then the bigger difference is basically in the Cubs outing, he mixed four seams and sinkers if Statcast is picking it up right, a lot more. He threw a combined 48% with those two, whereas today he threw 37% sinker, 10% fastball. So just a lot less, I guess, variation, and even threw 13% changeups versus 9 today. So he just had more of a 4-pitch mix, it looks like, in that Cubs outing, which I thought was interesting just because that outing grabbed me because he had 15 whiffs, which it's a significant number, especially for a guy like him that I think he had like 2 strikeouts today. So in that game against the Cubs, he had 26 called strikes and whiffs combined, which is a high figure. I think the other thing too that I wanted to talk about with Ross was early in the year, his first outing, he really started to fall off in his velocity throughout the outing. And over these last 2 starts, his velocities are pretty much constant throughout the outing. And today was only 67 pitches, but the game you were at, he went 86. And like I said, he didn't really tail off in his sinker 4-seam velocities, which I think is huge. And it kind of is what we said way early on in the year when we saw that, was that maybe he'll build into a little more conditioning, I guess. And it looks like he's got a little bit more of that stamina. So he's a guy that, like we were just talking about, we don't really have a lot of, all-star caliber starters, but he's been pretty strong. And he's a guy that, especially given our current situation of rotation help and versus where we started the year, his health and hopefully slow improvement throughout the year is going to be vital, just to take the ball every 5 or 6 days. So that's what I was looking at, was just Ross's velocity and his pitch mix in a game where he had slightly more swings and misses than usual.
Yeah, he looked really good. I don't know if it's because I had a couple of Cubby Ritas at Wrigley or what, but he looked solid. So after this week, Brewers are sitting at 21-15. Like I said, they got Yelich back today, so they're keeping their heads above water till then. Hopefully that gives them a little boost. They are 7-7 at home and 14-8 on the road. So tons of road games throughout the first month plus here. That's going to pay off, I think, eventually in the long run. 6 games over 500 on the road is awesome. Cubs are tied with them, but technically behind them in win percentage because they're 22-16. And then the Phillies have a good lead on the Braves in the East. The Dodgers are pulling away already in the West. And then in the AL, the Astros continue to struggle, which is still surprising me. Hader continues to struggle. The White Sox are awful. And then Baltimore, New York are at the top of that division in the East. Guardians have a 2.5 game lead on the Royals in the Central, and the Mariners and Rangers are tied in the West.
I was going to say real quick, and it's only kind of standings related, but we saw the first kind of major deal this week with a trade, and it's obviously because one team decided they were already out of contention for winning their division in the Marlins, a team that I won't really discredit them because they lost. They had a really strong rotation last year, and they lost almost all of it due to basically injury this year. So it's not really super fair to too harshly go after them. Even if they had a better lineup or invested a little bit more, they'd still be in a really, really, really tough spot. But it was interesting to see them already move on from at least their most well-known player. I mean, one of the best, or the best contact hitter in the league, probably. Just kind of very limited in all other skill sets, but interesting to see the Padres go out and make a move like that, especially when they already had a pretty crowded infield, but shows they're obviously trying to win now. So just something to monitor as the season goes on, as teams start to fall off, they'll start moving pieces. And what came to mind with the Marlins is, like I said, they had all those arms, and they still have some guys in their rotation that I'm sure they'd possibly move on from with their situation, whether it's Braxton Garrett or Weathers is okay. They don't have a ton of their studs healthy, and I don't know even what we'd try to acquire, but we were just talking about a shortage of starters. So I was curious if they continue to sell and if we maybe have interest in one of their at least decent arms that are available. But regardless, it's already that time of the season, I guess, where teams are going to basically give up and start retooling. So that's just something to watch when we talk about standings. Like you mentioned, the Astros underachieving, the Blue Jays underachieving. There might be some teams moving on from some pretty quality pieces, but we'll just have to see.
I won't count out the Astros until they're mathematically eliminated ever. All right, moving into the injuries and transactions section of the podcast. Adrian Uribe was optioned, as we mentioned already. Freddie suspended, as we mentioned already as well. Jacob Junis was moved to the 60-day IL, which not probably as big of a deal as it sounds, because he's been out so long that he could be activated in like 3 weeks or so, but hopefully not too much longer than that. We could use him back. Tyler Black was optioned, and Wade Miley underwent elbow surgery today. We knew last episode he was getting surgery. He underwent that today. Then the only thing that we haven't mentioned really is Joey Wiemer really bent his knee in a super funny way at Wrigley in game 1. And luckily it says that no damage showed on the scans. So hopefully just a short timetable for recovery for Joey Wiemer, but it looked kind of not too bad. It wasn't like a bad hyperextension, but it kind of bent to the side funny. So wishing the best to Joey Wiemer. Hopefully he's back soon. Am I missing anything on injuries or transactions? That's all I had.
No, I think you hit on the main stuff. Obviously, we saw, we already talked about, Tyler Black and Monasterio, and so on. So yeah, the main obvious piece is the pitchers.
Yeah, so moving to Around the Farm.
If it hadn't been for those meddling kids. If it hadn't been for you meddling kids. Meddling kids. If it hadn't been for these meddling laddies.
I just got an update like 5 minutes ago. Tyler Woessner, however you say it, we'll find out because he's going to be in Milwaukee pretty soon, I feel like. Maybe by the end of this year. But he's got 2 Ks in his first inning in AAA for the Nashville Sound. So he just made the move. He spent a short time in Biloxi. Looked incredible. Made the move up to AAA, and he's off tonight and running. So cool to see. Brett Wichrowski was promoted to take his spot in Biloxi. So those are 2 guys that you touched on, and I tweeted about this week. You touched on your little Around the Farm segment in the offseason, and then also Mizorowski is locking it down. He's walking a lot of guys, but other than that, his stats are starting to look really good again. So those 3 pitchers I wanted to highlight on first.
Yeah, like you said, all kind of guys we had an eye on, but it's awesome to see them all putting it together and not just having fun stats to talk about, but they're actually performing.
Moving to the hitting side, Brock Wilken returned. So it was good to see he took the fastball to the face. So good to see him back. Wes Clarke is back from injury, and right away he had a 2 RBI double and a 2-run home run in the first game back. And Daniel Guilarte won Carolina League Player of the Week for the Mudcats. He had 14 total bases in only 4 games that week. And then we hear a lot about Carlos F. Rodriguez, and the reason that he goes by Carlos F. Rodriguez in our org is because Carlos D. Rodriguez is a hitting prospect in the system. He went 12 for 19 for the Biloxi Shuckers and won Southern League Player of the Week. So we've had quite a few Player of the Weeks in the system in the last couple weeks. So good to see the farm looking strong and healthy on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. I remember I looked into Carlos D. Rodriguez a little bit in the offseason too, and I know he played pretty well for Biloxi last year, so it's good to see him still, putting together some strong numbers and see where that gets him. And it's tough when you look at a farm, obviously, and you look at your major league roster and you already have so many pieces and outfielders, so on. But you never know when you might have to call on a guy or when that guy is dealt to a team that does need a piece like him in exchange for something we need. We were just talking about the first sellers of the season have popped around, and you never know what other teams are interested in and who they might inquire on. So it's good to see those guys performing, whether they're in a Brewers uniform one day or in another major league uniform.
Yeah, that seems like a good time to spoil one of my final thoughts. one of the four pieces in the Yelich trade, Monte Harrison, committed to Arkansas to play football. So it's a perfect time to say that we traded four guys away that were all fairly highly touted prospects, and combined, I think they had like -4 WAR in MLB, and all of which I believe are done. I think two are playing professionally in other leagues. So having a strong farm system, even if you don't see a path for them to make it to the major league roster, to your point, if we are competing this year, next year, the following year, hopefully we can use them as trade bait and strengthen the major league roster. So it's easy to prospect hug, and I'm guilty of that as well, obviously, especially when we've hit on a lot in the last year or two. So, but good reminder that having a strong farm system doesn't always just translate to them getting called up. It can just mean we trade them away and they may never amount to really much of an MLB career. But
Yeah.
Side note, how awesome is that? That he's just gonna be playing football. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know when we were down at spring training for your bachelor party, he actually was playing for the Brewers again in that spring training game. And I think he pinch ran, but I know he scored a run. But I don't know, when he popped back up in the org, the original hype I guess he had was in the back of our heads. And then obviously there's a reason he came back to us for not a whole lot. But yeah, no, it's awesome. I think I read he was originally committed to Nebraska to play wide receiver, and then now he's playing wide out at Arkansas instead. So go Razorbacks. Woo pig suey, as Sandy Arkland, my Arkansas loving friend, likes to say.
yeah. All right. Take you to my random game in Brewers history.
Random.
July 27th, 1979. Mike Caldwell and Reggie Jackson start a brawl at County Stadium after there was an interview where Mike Caldwell talked about how the Yankees were a little frustrated because they couldn't figure him out, and he welcomed Reggie Jackson with the fastball towards the head. He got out of the way. This is the 70s, man. And he threw straight at his head, and Reggie popped out, and then I think Caldwell was going to pick up his bat, and then he charged the mound on his way off the field. So there was a brawl. Apparently, from people who are alive on Twitter, have told me that the Yankees and the Brewers had quite the rivalry back then. But that's the part that ties into what's going on now with the Brewers brawl last week. But Cecil Cooper had 3 home runs in that game, and the third of which was a walk-off. So cool game in Brewers history. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Found a little, if you can look that one up, July 27th, 1979. There's a cool little breakdown by Bob Uecker on YouTube. I threw it on the Twitter a couple weeks ago, but.
Sweet. Yeah. The old like 70s and then obviously 80s. It's just nostalgic for Brewers fans, period. But those old baseball clips and stuff from that era were awesome. I know I just saw, I think it was when Gorman Thomas was with the Mariners, but a really cool interview with him, and just, a different era of baseball and baseball players.
Those guys looked like Milwaukeeans, and they looked like
yeah.
Brewers.
Oh, yeah.
Big mustaches, big, thick guys, like looking like they're sitting out in the parking lot drinking beer after the game. So
They might have been.
Yeah. All right. And then just some of the smaller MLB news. You touched on quickly, but Luis Arias was traded from the Marlins to the Padres. I think the GM caught a little bit of backlash for saying, well, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs this year. But I mean, let's be frank. They're 10-29. So why not? Why not trade early? You might make a little bit more. He's got one more year of control after this, but the Padres continue to collect middle infielders. But I wonder if that might spark a little something for the Brewers on the pitching side, like you mentioned. So hopefully they can go out and get somebody sooner rather than later, because they're keeping their heads above water right now, but we need Gasser and maybe an outside piece as well to, I think, bolster down that rotation. The only other thing I had in the minor MLB news is Caleb Bosley, the hometown hero last year, was selected by the Minnesota Twins. So we got to see him playing in MLB again. So cool to see. That's probably like he's from northern Wisconsin, I believe. So got to be somewhat of a hometown team as well. So
yeah, no, that's cool. I was waiting for you to find a way to talk about Fanatics again this week, but I'm pretty sure I saw on Twitter that we might have the pinstripes back this week. There was a rumor going around, so.
Wow, it's a
we got that. We got that going for us.
I don't get how they're producing New City Connects. We haven't seen ours, but whatever, man. At least it sounds like they're gonna fix it. But we can spare the 10 minutes of Fanatics talk this episode. We'll leave it at that. The upcoming schedule: the Brewers have 4 against the Cardinals this weekend. I did just see that they had a rain out, so it sounds like we might be seeing Sonny Gray tomorrow, so that kind of stinks. He's been like the one bright spot on the Cardinals. And then
But we did beat the Cardinals the one game we faced Sonny Gray this
we
year.
sure did. Yep. And then after that, we got 3 at home against the Pirates, and then the Brewers head on the road to Houston, Miami, and Boston. Beer of the week.
I'll have a brewski, Charlie.
This is one that I've only had at the stadium. It's Bernie's Barrelman Ale. It's another Leinenkugel's beer. It's an amber ale. I'm not a huge dark beer guy, but on tap at the game, I'd probably say about an 8 out of 10. So go give it a try, even if you're not a dark beer guy. Bernie's Barrelman Ale. Do you have any final thoughts? I got like 2 more, but any final thoughts for us?
Not necessarily. I guess the one thing with the Cardinals we were talking about, they just lost Contreras with a broken hand, I think. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see what they decide to do, because they're old. Well, they have some young pieces, but a lot of their roster's pretty old, and their rotation obviously is, and it's not too great either. So I'm really curious to see what they decide to do soon, because as the Cardinals show their age with that injury, we saw Paul Skeens get a call for Saturday, it looks like. So the division's going kind of different ways for different rosters and teams, and just really curious to see what this looks like in a month or two from now, and see who's still holding on, see who keeps their players and tries this year or holds off for the future, and so on. So just, I guess, excited for the series ahead.
Yeah, fractured forearm, I believe, for Contreras. The Cardinals slid him up a little bit to try to steal strikes, and JD Martinez always stands way at the back of the box and swung right into his arm. So that looked extremely painful. But talking about Skeens, he gave up his first run in the minor leagues. He gave a home run. And I wanted to mention this because apparently it was a ball 4 call before this, and he challenged, because you can challenge in the minor leagues, and they changed it to a strike. So then it was a 3-1 count, and then he gave up a home run. I'm already thinking of all the ways where if this comes into Major League Baseball, where I'm going to be upset when something like that happens, where it's ball 4 in a big spot and Devin Williams challenges it and think, oh, sweet, it's a strike, and then home run. And then I'd be thinking, man, what could have been? Right now, we always think, we always, an ump blows a call, and then this, and this happens, and you're like, well, that wouldn't have happened. Well, now we might find out what actually happens if they correct it. So.
Yeah. Well, I know, I think it was about, I don't know if it was about Langford or it was about Tyler Black. It was one of the rookies, but
well,
it was
Black
talking
for
about
the
that.
Brewers a couple times, but Langford, they said, has been getting screwed all.
Yeah. And it was talking about all the guys that are getting promoted, and they're used to having the ability to challenge and a properly called strike zone. And then they get to the league and umps are giving guys an extra inch or 2 off the plate. And these guys with good eyes are watching, and the umps don't care, and they're ringing them up on it. So I think that's one interesting piece, as long as the MLB doesn't have it and the minors continues to have it, is it's kind of hurting guys that really know their zones, or at least they'll have to adjust to what the new major league zone is. But I think that's really an interesting piece, because it's really hard to blame minor league guy when he comes up and he has what they deem his zone based on the challenge system, and now he just has to get used to the beauty of the man-made calls in the league and in baseball. But I think that's a really interesting thing to watch for how we adapt.
I think we're still a bit away from fully automated strike zones, unfortunately, because I'm getting really sick of umpires changing the course of games. But I would not be surprised if opening day next year we have that challenge system for the minor leagues. I think it's like once per at bat, the pitcher and the hitter each get one. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I mean, it's so quick and efficient. So my last final thought is we have a giveaway going on with our partner Spiders. So we all know the ad, spidersbattinggloves.com. If you use the Scoop 15 at checkout, you can get 15% off all your baseball gear. But Spiders gave us, after the Brewers win the other day, an opportunity to do a giveaway. So if you go to our Twitter at Brew Crew Scoop and you retweet the tweet, it's currently pinned. We'll probably pin this episode tomorrow, but it should be right near the top. So if you see the tweet, retweet it, and then on Memorial Day, when the Cubs come to town for the first game, we'll pick a winner. So that's all I got. You got anything else, Cole?
I'm just waiting to enter, man. I need another pair. Maybe
yeah.
it'll make me play softball if I get those gloves.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not really. Just looking forward to another week and weekend, and I don't know. It's just so much anticipation, waiting for games to happen to see where we go, because I feel like there's still just so much uncertainty with what this team and roster is going to look like and be able to do in the next 2 months, if we can keep rolling, or if the bullpen stuff like you were talking about starts to affect us and our rotation starts to wither a little bit. So I'm just excited, but anxiously waiting. It's like, obviously you play for the playoffs, or you follow a season for the playoffs, but the journey getting there is just so up and down, and you almost want to fast forward to see if we're for real or we're not. But for now, we're for real. So let's keep it rolling.
Like the journey to see who wins the Spiders giveaway. It's pure anxiety. All right, we'll be back next week. Cardinals in town this weekend, so go Brewers.
Go Brewers.